All right. Welcome everybody to the monthly Kin question period. So just a quick recap. The purpose of this is once a month I like to get on a live video YouTube and take questions directly from the community. This is something we've been doing for a long time at Kik now, and people really value it. So just to recap, the way this works is go onto Reddit, ask any question in the comments, and then whatever gets upvoted to the top, I will answer so long as it passes 3 tests. So first of all, it has to be on topic. Second, it has to be constructive. And then finally, third, it can't be about an individual person or entity. Just for going forward, we're going to do these AMAs on a monthly basis. So we'll do these on the second Tuesday of each month at 2 p.m. Eastern. And we'll open up the questions at least 2 hours ahead of time. So with that, we'll go for about half an hour, and we'll see what questions we have today. Okay. Dylan, of course, is at the top. All right. Are the prospective partners satisfied with the liquidity that is currently available for Kin tokens? What processes are you recommending for ecosystem services to off-ramp their earned Kin into dollars? If they have to move from Kin to a native asset and then move to dollars, wouldn't that double tax the accounting burden? Dylan, you have good questions. You got a lot of questions. So maybe let me take those one at a time. So the first one is that liquidity is obviously really important. When we talk to partners of digital apps from small all the way to huge companies, we sort of get a resounding excitement about Kin. I think everybody has been sort of fighting this fight against these digital monopolies of Facebook and Google and just struggling to do so. And this idea now that, hey, there's a new way to monetize that's going to turn you into a sustainable business. But not only that, it will actually make your app better for your consumers and it will align you with your consumers, gets people really excited. And so as we work through that, there was a bunch of questions around regulatory and tax and incentives and how all these different pieces will work. When it comes to liquidity, that is definitely a big question. Okay, I get all this Kin, but at the end of the day, I want to be able to take some of this Kin, monetize that, and use that to fund my operations and as a reward for building out this ecosystem. And so for this whole thing to work, for this ecosystem to work, there needs to be a lot of liquidity. And so getting on major exchanges is something that we're focused on, that we need in order for Kin to be successful. Now, to answer, Dylan, your second question, 3 questions in one. Next time, I'm only going to take the first one. To answer your second question, a question potential partners have after this is, okay, I get all this Kin. Let's say there is lots of liquidity, but I'm not used to managing these crypto assets. What do I do? And so that's part of the platform and the ecosystem we're building out, is getting partners in place, not just to build these digital services, but also to build all those complementary pieces that make the whole ecosystem work. And one of those is exchanges for developers. So making it really easy for them, not necessarily to have to manage their own cryptocurrency, their own Kin that they get from the reward engine, but also the option to have somebody manage it for them and to make that really easy for them. And then finally, on the tax side, tax is something we've spent a lot of time looking at, a lot of time working on. We're sort of, people from KPMG from all over the world contributing to how we can make the tax side of this work for developers, for individuals. And so I don't have the exact answer to the double taxing, but it's definitely something we're paying attention to and making sure we're doing it in a tax efficient way. Okay. Refresh here. I see Dylan. Dylan, I gotta say, every time when I see that there's a thread from you about Reddit, I'm like, this is gonna be good. So I'm not surprised. If Kin is running on both Ethereum and Stellar, how will you prevent this from being a user experience nightmare for those that don't know the difference? Will all Kin entering the ecosystem be converted to Stellar Kin? So I think this is something that got us really excited is, hey, we like Ethereum for all these reasons, but not these reasons. We like On the other side, we like Stellar for sort of the opposite reasons, but we don't like it for other reasons as well. And I think while we were originally thinking, hey, we have to be on one or the other, we've come to the conclusion that not only is it possible, but it would also be best if we could be on both. If Kin as a token could move across blockchains, move across both Ethereum and Stellar. And the reason for that is these two blockchains target a different use case. You know, when you look at Ethereum, what it's really good for is it's really plugged into the crypto investor market. You know, it's exchanges all know how to implement an ERC20 token, wallets, hardware wallets, that whole ecosystem and infrastructure around tokens for crypto investors is already built out and very mature. But what Ethereum is not great at is high scale transactions with low fees and low confirmation times. And that's something that Stellar is good at. You know, Stellar, we can do way more transactions, way faster confirmation times, and way several orders of magnitude lower transaction fees. But Stellar is not plugged into exchanges. It's not plugged into wallets or hardware wallets. It's missing all these other pieces. And so what we decided to do is we said, wait, so Ethereum could be great for investors, whereas Kin could be great for the average consumer. How could we use both in a very simple way? And I think one of the big insights we had is these two groups, while there's some investors who are also consumers, and while there's some consumers who are also investors, by and large, we can keep these running in sort of these two different networks and support each better by combining these two systems. So how we make this really simple is, for the most part, the digital services that millions of consumers are going to be interacting with Kin on a daily basis in their digital lives, you know, earning it and spending it, these small amounts inside all these different digital services, that will happen on top of Stellar. So they're getting really high scale, really low confirmation times, and we, the ecosystem, are getting really low fees. So it's working really well for them. But at the same time, if those consumers, if you know, you get maybe 1% of them are earning more, they could then always take that and move it over to the Ethereum blockchain, put it in hardware wallets, put it on exchanges, and vice versa. A consumer could say, wait a second, I'm using all this Kin inside all these digital services. Instead of just earning it, how could I buy more? And so what they'll be able to do is they'll be able to go out to Ethereum, onto the exchanges, buy a bunch of Kin on Ethereum, and then move that onto the Stellar blockchain. And so in this way, we think we can combine sort of the best of each blockchain while getting rid of the disadvantages. Okay. Have you been in contact with the App Store and the Google Play Store to make sure Kin earning spending will be allowed without in-app purchase fees? Have any of the applications received advanced approval, or will that just be determined when they're ready to release? This is something we've been dealing with at Kik for since we started 9 years ago now. You know, building these applications, putting them into the Apple App Store, putting them into the Google Play Store, getting them reviewed, keeping them on side, etc. And so when it comes to a cryptocurrency inside of an app, particularly on the Apple platform, there is a question mark there. Because you can look at it in one way and you say, well, this is sort of like in-app purchase. I'm using a cryptocurrency to unlock a feature set. Hey, I want to get into this group chat and I have to pay with Kin. You know, historically, that would be something that you had to pay with in-app purchase. But there's a place that in-app purchase doesn't work for this digital sharing economy we're trying to build. And there's two reasons. The first is that the amounts are much smaller. So now the idea, like, if you want to get into a group chat, you have to pay a minimum of 99 cents, doesn't make sense. People want to pay 9 cents or 0.9 cents or 0.09 cents. So we need something that can go to much smaller denominations. And the second reason it doesn't work is because it's not just something we want consumers spending, but it's more so something we want them earning. So it's not just on one side, hey, I want to spend, you know, 0.9 cents to get into that group chat, but it's also, I want to, on the other side, earn that 0.9 cents when I charge somebody to get into my group chat, We want it to be this medium of exchange in this digital sharing economy where people are both earning and spending in these small amounts. And so for these two reasons, in-app purchase doesn't work. Now, what does Apple think about that? We're having conversations with Apple about this. And the punchline, I would say, is it's early and we don't know. But when I think about Apple and I think about what they're known for, I can't see anything that's better for them than something like Kin. Because with Apple, they've always been champions of the rights of consumers. They've always been champions of the rights of developers. And they compete with big companies, their biggest rivals, who do not champion the rights of those two things. When you buy an Apple product, you are their user. You know, they say, hey, let's build a really good phone. And if we make it good enough, then people will buy it. So the incentives of what they're trying to do are completely aligned with what their consumers are trying to get. I want to build a great phone for you, and I want to buy a great phone from you. Whereas when you look at Facebook and Google, that's no longer true. Facebook and Google are trying to accumulate the attention of consumers so that they can then extract as much value from those consumers as possible. Hey, come to Facebook. We're going to addict you as much as we possibly can to show you as many ads as we possibly can to get you to buy as much stuff that you might not need as much as we possibly can. And so on something like Facebook, the consumer is not the target audience. The consumer is actually the product. And so they are misaligned with their consumers. They aren't trying to give value to a consumer. They're trying to build something that's amazing for their lives. They're trying to addict them more so they can put more ads in front of them so that they can get people to buy more stuff so that they can make more money. And so when you think about Apple, you're saying, Apple, you are aligned with your consumers. That's your thing. Whereas Facebook and Google are not. So by adopting something like Kin, by allowing something like Kin, by supporting something like Kin, you are saying, hey, consumers, we believe in your rights. We want to be aligned with you. Our goal is no longer to extract value from you, but is to facilitate the exchange of value between you. And that, I think, is just so fundamentally different. But there's something more. By adopting something like Kin, Apple can also champion the rights of developers. When you look at the most downloaded apps in the Apple App Store last year, all four of the four most downloaded apps in the Apple App Store, as I read it, were all Facebook properties. Facebook, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Facebook owns Apple's App Store. And the way they do that is by first giving themselves an unfair advantage by choosing a monetization model that gives them way more ability to monetize versus anybody else. They might only have 100 times more users than Kik, but they make way more than 100 times more money. But then Facebook turns around and they use this to copy and crush their rivals. They say, hey, little developer, great idea. But we know that you don't have the scale to monetize effectively. So we are going to turn around and copy and crush you. And they'll even go so far as to bankroll some of their other properties to achieve this. So for example, with Snapchat, great product idea. Let's do Snapchat stories. Instagram not only comes out and says, hey, we're going to copy this pixel for pixel. And we're super open about it. Hey, we thought it was a great product. We copied it. Why not? Why can't we do that? Not only did they do that, but then when it came to monetization and putting ads into stories, Instagram said, you know what? We're gonna wait to put ads into stories. And Snapchat saying, what do you mean you're going to wait? Like, how are you going to make money? Oh, we're going to make money from somewhere else. How are you guys going to make money? Well, we only have one choice. We have to put ads in stories. That's our only revenue model. Instagram goes, well, yeah, that sucks. Like, better put in some ads and see how your users respond. And they can wait. Snapchat puts ads in their stories. Their users get upset. Instagram lets that go for a while. And then Instagram, a few weeks later, once everybody's pissed at Snapchat, says, hey, we're going to add some ads as well because, yeah, we also want to make money, but don't worry, we're not going to put in as many as Snapchat. And so the second beautiful thing that Apple can do is champion the rights of developers. Hey, developers, we believe that you're an innovative group. We believe you can deliver value to the world. But all the monetization models you have available to you today aren't working. But good news, we've partnered with Kin, and there's a new monetization model, one which is premised not on extracting value from consumers, but one which is premised on facilitating the exchange of value between consumers. And not only that, the way that the monetization model is set up, the way that the Kin reward engine is set up is if you have 10 times the number of transactions, then you get 10 times the number of reward. Unlike advertising, where if you have 10 times the number of users, you get 100 times or 1,000 times the amount of revenue because of these network effects around scale and advertising. And so that's where, when I think about Kin and I think about Apple, it just like comes across as like such a natural fit to me, so exciting. And this is, when we talked about, well, this is what we say. It's like, you champion the rights of users. You always want to do what's best for the user. You're privacy first. You don't collect all this data on your users. You end-to-end encrypt everything. Second, you created this developer market. You said to the world, hey, we believe developers can be innovative. But fast forward to today, and these monopolies have taken over your app store. Here's a way with Kin to put consumers back in control, to put developers back into control, and to say to your two biggest competitors, hey, we don't think that's right. We don't think that's fair. And so we think Kin on the Apple platform is a super exciting thing. Okay. Dylan, you got all the questions. I'm going from top to bottom. Those are the rules here. Let me just make sure I haven't answered this one. No. Oh, a non-Dylan question. Last AMA, you discussed how important liquidity and thus exchanges are for the success of Kin. Since this AMA, there has been no further communication on this topic. Could you please provide an update on the status of this subject? Liquidity is the only thing that's going to make this ecosystem work. If we don't have liquidity by the time we launch the Kin reward engine, then what are all these developers going to do with their Kin? How is it going to be a sustainable business model for them? So getting on these major exchanges is a major focus for us. But given the state of the crypto market, we need to both respect the requests of these exchanges to keep everything confidential. And we also need to go about this very carefully so that we're completely on side from a regulation point of view. So I don't have any updates today, but what I'll say is this is a high priority for us because it's required to make the ecosystem work by the time we launch the Kin rewards engine. How has the KRE plan been amended since the RSC document? And what aspects remain undecided? For example, was a reputation model adopted? Why is Kin interested in using centralized services, VCs, to accredit startups for added incentives rather than organic growth models? To accredit startups, I'm not sure what that means. So maybe let me back up here for a second and try to do my best to explain our current thinking on this. When we look at Bitcoin, what we look at it is not as an application, not as a blockchain, but as a decentralized incentive platform. And what I mean by that is what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a solution to a problem, in this case, moving value around the internet. But in order to do that, they need people from all around the world to contribute. And the genius of Bitcoin is how they set that compensation up for those contributions. Because what they basically said is, hey, we're creating this new cryptocurrency called Bitcoin. Once it's created, there will never be more. If you help us run the infrastructure, you could get your own Bitcoin. And by the way, there'll be demand for Bitcoin because it will be the only way by spending Bitcoin to use the application. Okay? Cryptocurrency where there will never be more, a way to earn some of it by contributing, and then a way to create demand for it in the final solution. If you want to use the final solution, you have to use the cryptocurrency. And so that's what we're trying to do with the Kin rewards engine. we said, how could we take that idea, that philosophy, that decentralized incentive platform idea, and apply it not at the infrastructure level, but at the application level? And so instead of, hey, if you contribute to help us, run the infrastructure, we'll pay you Bitcoin. It's, if you help us contribute to creating these amazing places to earn and spend kin, you'll get kin from the reward engine. Now, I think to the question of what has changed in our thinking, it's the thing that's evolved is how we pay out this kin. When you look at Bitcoin, the amount of reward you get as a percentage of all Bitcoin that exists goes like this. So it's a lot in the beginning, and then it sort of tails off over time until all 21 million Bitcoins are in circulation. So with the kin reward engine, we took a similar thing. Hey, we'll start with all kin, and then we'll, over time, there'll be less and less, but hopefully it will be worth more and more as the ecosystem grows. I think the challenge of that at the application layer is you could have some developers who, in the beginning, create a very simple application, and maybe it's even it's spammy in a way, or it's gaming, and yet they're getting this huge chunk of kin. And so we sort of step back from that and say, oh, okay, well, maybe in the beginning, instead of making it algorithmic like Bitcoin, it's just an algorithm that pays out the Bitcoin, we'll make it more subjective. We'll say, okay, in the beginning, until we get this algorithm sorted out, we will decide who to give what kin to in the beginning to get this whole ecosystem going, and then we'll make it more algorithmic over time. I think there's actually an interesting option in between, where instead of paying out large amounts in the beginning, we actually start with smaller amounts. So that instead of making them subjective, we control them. Hey, no spammy app is going to get all this kin right off the bat. Then we can still make it algorithmic. So instead of the payout going like this over time, perhaps the payout could go like this over time. So it starts small, so we can weed out ways to spam it and game it, but still have it be algorithmic. Then over time, as we get confident that this algorithm is working, it's robust, it's hard to game, hard to spam, the payouts start to ramp up. The ecosystem starts to grow, and those payouts become more valuable. So then as those payouts are getting really valuable, we can then tail off the payouts, because while the percentage we're paying out is going down, the ecosystem is growing and the value of those payouts is going up. So I think just how we pay this out has evolved. I think we want to keep it like Bitcoin, where it's a decentralized incentive platform. If you want to contribute to it, you don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to, sort of petition anybody. You don't have to do all this business stuff of trying to say, hey, if you do this for me, then we'll do this for you, and maybe we'll fall through and maybe we won't. Instead, we take all that logic and we put it in a piece of code, so that as a developer, no matter who I am, how big, how small, no matter what country I'm in, I know the rules of the game. And I know those rules are guaranteed, that if I create this output, then based on the algorithm, I will be rewarded this much kin. Based on a cryptocurrency, there will never be more. And then based on the software, the platform, that there will be demand for it, because it will be the only way to transact in this kin ecosystem. So that's really our thinking, and that's some of the evolution we're going through. But I think the thing we've been focused on sort of before all that is how we get to the scale. None of this matters until we have the scale. And so that's really been our focus with Stellar and with Kik, is having a blockchain that can get scale, showing how it can be used at scale with Kik, and then bringing in partners with the kin reward engine to then take the ecosystem to the next level. Okay. Will the standalone app be available for everyone to download in App Store, or only for select users? What will the initial amount of kin given to new users be? Okay. I think this is a good one to end on. So the question we had with kin is, okay, we can make kin really easy to use inside Kik. That's what we did with Kik Points. We know how to do that. But how do we make it really easy for developers to use it and for their users to use it? So for example, from a developer point of view, that's why we call it the 5-minute SDK. In 5 minutes, as a developer, you should be able to integrate the SDK and have it up and running for all your users. From there, you can customize it. You can create custom ways to earn and custom ways to spend, to build more transaction volume, to get more of the daily reward. But out of the box, it's only going to take you 5 minutes. But the other thing we had to do is make it really simple for their users. For example, if, as a user, I use Kik and Kin inside Kik, but then I want to use Kin inside of another app. Well, how do we tie those two accounts together? When I use Kin in that second app, do I have to create a Kin account? Do I have to link that to my first account? Like, how does all that work? How do we make that really simple and easy? So as a developer, we're not saying, hey, add this whole new login flow and sign up flow. Instead, no, like just right away, right out of the box, I can start earning and spending, even if I've never heard of Kin before, no matter what app I'm in. And so the way we solve that is we said, okay, let's have individual balances in each of the apps a consumer uses. So in Kik, I can earn and spend in Kik, and I have one balance. In a second app, I can earn and spend in Kin, and I have a different separate balance. And what this means is I can get up and running on day one. There's no account creation. I can start earning and spending inside Kin, and there's nothing else to learn. And more importantly, from a sort of security point of view, the Kin I earn inside of Kik can't be sort of taken by that second app I'm using because they're separate balances. But as a user, you're saying, well, okay, that's good. I can get up and running right away. As a developer, I'm saying that's good. I can get up and running right away. But then as a user, at some point you say, well, I have 100 Kin inside Kik, and I have 100 Kin inside the second app, and there's something I want to spend on in that second app that costs me 150 Kin. How do I get all my Kin into one place so I can buy this bigger thing? That's where the standalone app comes in. What the standalone app does is says, hey, you're a user, you're earning and spending Kin in these different places. Wouldn't you like to consolidate your balance into a single account and be able to manage that balance in a sort of simple yet secure way? So you can earn it now in all these different places. You can spend it in all these different places, but you have one balance, and it's all very secure and easy to use. That's the role of the standalone wallet, this cross-app earning and spending. So when we create the standalone wallet, what we're doing is we're not saying, hey, we're doing this whole Kin thing and it should be decentralized and nobody should control the ecosystem. But wouldn't it be great if everybody had this one app, and then that one app becomes the control point? That one app, that Kin standalone wallet, becomes the centralized place that can sort of has all the relationships with the users, all the relationships with the developers, can direct all the traffic. Then we're right back to where we started, where now as a developer in the ecosystem, I got to trust this Kin standalone wallet. So that's not the point. If that's not the point, what is? The point of the standalone wallet is merely to, I should say merely, is to play a very important role serving as a prototype and an example of an application that anyone should be able to build. So that as a developer, I'm saying, hey, I don't like the Kin standalone wallet, but look, here's all the code I have. All the code for it is right there. I'm going to take it, build my own standalone wallet, and put my own tweak on it. Maybe it's really tight integration into an exchange. Maybe it's better key recovery. Who knows what it is? But then I, as a consumer, can go out and I have all my choices around which wallet I want to use. It's sort of like the wallet becomes the browser. On the browser, that's the way we sort of access and manage all these different websites we use. That's what the standalone wallet becomes. It's a way to access and manage the Kin we earn and spend in all these different applications. But just like the browser, the wallet should be an open standard, and anybody should be able to build their own wallet, and anybody should be able to choose which wallet they want to use. And so that's the purpose of the standalone wallet, is to serve as a prototype, an example for this sort of key piece of the ecosystem that ultimately we hope there'll be many different options for consumers to use. Okay, that's it for this month. I look forward to seeing everybody the second week of March, and we'll go from there. And thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.